This is Talking Giants Baseball with your hosts, Dallas Helliker and Stephen Williamson.
All right, welcome to Talking Giants Baseball. I'm Dallas, that's Steve, and I don't know if you can smell it in the air, Steve, but baseball's back.
Very close. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, Saturday will be the very first spring training game. John Miller and Dwayne Kuiper will be on the call, and it's going to be good. I'm excited to see what we have in store for this team this year. But before we talk about the team, I wanted to just recap what has gone on during this offseason. You know, like last time on Giants Baseball, so end of last year finished disappointingly. Didn't make they made a bunch of moves trying to save Farhan's job. Didn't happen. Didn't make the playoffs. Finished under 500. So they re-signed Matt Chapman, was the first deal that happened, to a 6-year deal, I think it was. They fired Farhan and hired Buster Posey as the president of baseball operations, which I think is a pretty universally popular move among fans. I mean, a change needed to be made, and everyone loves Buster. And then right off the bat, before the winter meetings, he signs Adames, shortstop, and filled, I think, what the Giants' biggest need in the offseason. They didn't have a shortstop. The previous year, they went into the year basically anointing Luciano as the shortstop of the future. He's not a shortstop.
Doesn't have a position.
Doesn't have a position. They're working on that. Willy Adames signed the largest contract in San Francisco Giants history in general. And Buster got off to a good start on the offseason. Then there was kind of a long period of not too much going on. There was talk about Corbin Burns, trying to sign him. Didn't happen. And they ended up signing Justin Verlander, 42-year-old pitcher, maybe the best pitcher to play baseball over the last 20 years. So just a matter of how much he has left in the tank. And that was really the only two big moves that they made. They did trade Taylor Rogers, the left-handed Roger twin, and freed up $6 million in cash, which a lot of people thought, well, maybe they're going to go and sign, another free agent. Didn't happen. I think basically where they're at is kind of see what they have in their current lineup as it is, their current roster. And, I think just kind of taking the temperature, taking the pulse of the fan base out there. There's a lot of uneasiness. Some people aren't too happy that the Giants really didn't do too much while the Dodgers made signing after signing. They signed Blake Snell and Michael Conforto and Teoscar Hernandez. They re-signed him. And Hyun-Sung Kim, they signed Roki Sasaki, who the Giants, even though it was pretty clear he was going to go to the Dodgers, they kind of got their hopes up that maybe he might come to the Giants. And then just this last week, the Dodgers signed Farhan Zaidi to their, an advisory role or whatever. So I don't know. I think people started out the offseason pretty high on the Giants with Buster and Adames. And then as time has gone on, they're a little bit uneasy. And then now, as spring training has started, I start to feel like a little bit of hopefulness going on in the fan base. Just what I've read, what I've listened to on KNBR, you kind of get a feel for what people are thinking. What are your takes on the Giants offseason? How do you rate it?
Yeah, I mean, they're saying hope springs eternal. That's never more true than in baseball when spring literally is the time to be hopeful. And I think every team is, right? I mean, I don't see why it's any different for the Giants right now, other than we know that a lot of Giants fans are disappointed with how the offseason went. They wanted a bigger splash. They wanted to keep up with the Dodgers in the arms race and the Padres and the Diamondbacks. And I think anyone who's kind of realistic, or I feel I'm more realistic than a lot of fans, that wasn't ever going to happen. So kind of starting at the end of your points first, Farhan to the Dodgers is like, to me, say what you will with the Dodgers and they're buying championships, however you feel about that, the Dodgers are a very well-run franchise. I mean, I think any fan can sit there and say, man, I wish we were the Dodgers. And the fact that they want Farhan and the Giants didn't, to me, that says a lot. Like, I mean, I agree with what you said. A change had to be made. Farhan had his time. He was given his chance. He had a long leash. And it didn't work out for whatever reason. It just never came together. The Giants, outside of that the 2021 season where they won a ton of games, and then they kind of, fell dead in the playoffs. There was never a huge, like, Farhan is doing it feeling, like it was very hopeful at the beginning and it never worked out. So exactly like you said, it was time. It was just time to change direction, try something new. I do think hiring Posey was the easy choice. I think that him being a part owner, having that love and support of the fans, even if we remember early in the when Posey came on board, ownership came out and said we're cutting back payroll this year. They didn't mince words. They didn't say maybe. They didn't say we're going to wait and see. It was pretty clear that we want to scale back payroll from where we were at last year. We want to get it down to about this 170, 180 million mark, and that's exactly where they are right now. So the fans who thought they were going to go out and get Corbin Burns, they were going to get Pete Alonso, they were going to sign all these free agents, I don't think that was ever in the cards. And I think that part of the reason bringing Posey into this role was the move they made was to make that more palatable for people. That, if they brought in a brand new GM or an experienced GM or Pobo, whatever it was, and they didn't make the moves the fans wanted to make, there would have been a lot more heat. It would have been a lot, what are these guys doing? Why do we hire them? What are we paying them for? I don't know, is Posey even getting paid for the job? He's already the owner of the team. Is he paying himself? So it kind of gives a feeling to me like, this was the really safe move. We kind of knew what the plan was, and Posey agreed to like steer this ship that we already knew where it was headed. It's kind of predetermined. But
right. The only thing is, I do think that, like Posey, I don't think that he's going to be content to accept mediocrity.
Yeah.
Now, I do think he thinks that he knows the winning formula is building through your farm system.
Yep.
On those 3 World Series teams he was on, it was all Giants guys that came up through the Giants farm system, homegrown players, and then they would add in not huge free agents, but people that played the roles that needed to be filled.
Yep, role players, bench players. Yep.
There was no huge signings. Just the fact that, Buster Posey was the highest paid player on the team, and they weren't getting anyone that was above Posey, on the pecking order or whatever. Or
their highest profile free agent back in the early teens that they signed to be a main guy in the team was probably in the mold of Willy Adames. It was Edgar Renteria. Like, people don't look at him that way. I never would look back and say, oh, Edgar Renteria was this big star we signed. Or I think Adames has a little bit more of that star power. But, he was paid well. He had a decent-sized contract at the time, and he was expected to come in and, like, be a main contributor to the team. And,
well, I think there's some pretty good comparisons there, too, because you're talking about professional guys that bring a maturity to the clubhouse, and they're just good. They're good in the clutch. They produce when you have to produce. At least historically, both those guys, have had success in, when you ratchet up that dial, when you have to, get a hit, they can get a hit. So I
And
think that
Renteria
is
came from winning teams, and Adames came from. I mean, the Brewers. I mean, they have consistently been one of those teams that has outperformed. They were predicted to finish fourth or fifth by most experts last year. They won the NL Central by a long shot. They made a good run in the playoffs. They're one of those franchises that they just win. They just keep finding a way with limited resources. And so, getting a guy like that, I think, great move.
Yeah. So the question I have is, and I think it's partially been answered now, is that what is the Giants' strategy? They came out of the bat, they signed Adames, big time free agent signing. And you're thinking, oh, okay, they're going for it. They're going to sign free agents. Not the case. I think basically what it says is that the Giants realized they didn't have a shortstop in their farm system. So they needed to fill that hole. That was the biggest hole that they identified, and they filled it with a solid guy. Now, I think step 2 on the strategy is figure out what you have, because last year they kind of shuffled people up and down. Matos never really got a shot. He came up, he was player of the week 1 week. The next week he was gone, right? And we never got a feel for, is this guy going to stick or not? Same thing. I mean, a lot of the talk was, do you sign Pete Alonso for the first base? But they have Bryce Eldridge coming up. He made it through every level of the minor leagues last year, ending in AAA. And, he's very likely the first baseman of the future. But you don't really know what you have until, he proves he could make it in the big leagues. So that's still an unknown. And then you've got the pitching. You've got Harrison and Birdsong. They're guys that have a very high ceiling, but both struggled at points last year. Harrison more so than Birdsong, I think, but they both are very young, and you don't quite know what you have in them. So, yes, they signed Verlander because when it comes to the innings count, I think they realized they didn't have enough to starting pitching to make it through the whole season, because Webb is the only guy that's going to pitch 200 innings. So they brought in the veteran Verlander to augment that rotation. But, before you invest in a Corbin Burns, why don't you figure out if you already have a Corbin Burns in your system?
Yep, I agree with that 100%. I think that was the right move. I think that signing, bringing back Chapman and Adames, I think that was more or less the plan from the get-go. I know they didn't come out and publicly say that. They didn't want to crush fan spirits at the beginning of the offseason. Posey comes in, they were kind of riding that wave of euphoria and the joy, you have the good vibes. Grab Adames right away. But I do think it's people hate like the, development, assessing years, but I think that's where they are in the window right now. Right? They're not going to beat the Dodgers right now. Let's be honest. They're probably not going to beat the Padres right now. They probably aren't as good as the Diamondbacks right now. Going out and just throwing money at the wall, we've seen that. Farhan tried to do that a few times, right? I don't think it's the best strategy. I think that hopefully Posey, ownership, Manassian, everyone else who's now running the team, they agree that let's not just throw money at the wall again. Let's actually try to build something, and let's try to get a new core together, and let's try to kind of go at this a little bit slower and methodically instead of just signing willy-nilly free agents and hope that we get lightning in a bottle, because that really doesn't happen very often. Teams that go out and sign a lot of free agents, you rarely see them being the ones making good deep postseason runs. They usually end up being upside down bad contracts more often than not. I think the offseason, I give it a pretty high grade, even though it's not the grade that people wanted. I think that what they did was what they needed to do, other than maybe a teardown would be the only other thing I could say that I would get excited about. Let's tear it down, let's get young, let's tank for a few years. But I know that Giants ownership has not had that appetite for that, so I don't see that happening.
They've never had that appetite, and can't really blame them. I mean, I think they're doing pretty well financially. If I'm not mistaken. And
Yep.
The attendance did increase last year with the additions of Snell, and Farhan made some moves, bringing in some free agents and making one last chance to save his job or whatever. And at times last season, there was some excitement with the team. And I think the fans kind of reacted to that and came out to the park a little bit more than the previous 2 years. And I think, the mixture of the veteran guys they currently have with some of these younger players, if they can start to produce and start to show results, then it could be another season where they take a step forward. A teardown would mean you take a step backwards. You're not selling that many tickets, and you're going to have to just eat it for a few years. And I think they don't really want to do that.
That really does feel like that's the reason, right? It's not about making the team better in the future. It's that they don't want to suffer the short-term loss, and they run it like a business, and they want to stay in the black. And I guess I can, if I own the Giants, I'd probably feel the same way. I own them to make money, so
right.
I can't blame them.
And the way that baseball is designed now with the extra wild card slot, all you have to do is, be a little bit better than average, and you can be in the playoffs.
Yep, if you can finish a little over 500, you got a chance to get in.
And then you get hot, and who knows what can happen.
We've seen that before.
Yeah, exactly. So last year the Giants finished 2 games under 500, or 80 and 82, which I guess is a game under 500. Vegas has the over under this year at 79.5 wins. Do you think they will win more or less than 79.5?
I'm often called the cynic or the pessimist. So if I'm betting here, I'm going to take the under on that number. But I think that Vegas nailed it. I predicted them personally to go 79 wins, like exactly, right around that number. So to me, that just seems like that's probably where they're going to land. Maybe they have a good couple of weeks where they're hot and guys they're winning a few extra games. They can maybe creep that up a little bit. I will say that I think that I don't think they're going to be a lot worse than in the 70s. Like, I don't see them having in the seasons in the 60s wins or low 70s. I think they're going to be mid 70s, at worst. I guess, there's a situation where key guys get hurt for a long time. It could go spiral. But I think I think their floor is pretty high. But I think their ceiling is potentially, Fitzgerald develops, Ramos keeps developing. Verlander can stay healthy and do something. Pitching, the young pitchers, keep developing and they end up being pretty decent. I could see him winning. I'm not going to say 90 games, but in the 80s, I could see him getting up in the mid 80s and kind of fighting for that wild card. I don't think that's a big stretch. So
right, and then the reason I'm optimistic is if I pull up the sheet here. Let's see if I can. Here, let's do this. So I have the player on the top is who started there last year, and then the player at the bottom is who's starting there this year. And so you go around and see, have they improved or not? So Ramos, you don't know because he had a great year last year. He was an all-star last year. If he has the same year this year and he plays a full season, he would be an improvement over Conforto. Mm-hmm. I believe.
Yeah, so what we got out of Conforto, definitely. I mean,
what we got out of
really
it.
Broke out here. We know he
of
can
course,
be,
he's going to go to the Dodgers and just hit the hell out of the ball next year, and then we're going to be wishing we still had him. But, I think that's an upgrade from over what we got. Last year, Lee played a quarter of the season, maybe less, and was out the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. If we can get Jung-Hoo Lee for a whole season, I'd say that's an improvement. Now, again, there's always a question mark. This going to be his second year, really his first full year in Major League Baseball, hitting Major League pitching.
His second try at being a rookie, for sure. Yeah,
his second try at being a rookie. Yep. This is Ramos's second try at it's going to be his sophomore season. Mm-hmm. The weakest part of the Giants, I think, is Mike Yastrzemski in right field. They've said, we're going to platoon him with Matos, possibly. I believe that is the worst idea I have heard. The reason why is, I mean, Yaz, if you're going to have him take the majority of at-bats against right-handed pitching, well, 70% of pitching in baseball is right-handed. So you're basically not giving Matos a fair shot at playing every day. You're going to have him play a third of the time or whatever, and he's not going to really have a fair crack at seeing if he can stick in the MLB, in the majors. So if it's my call, I put Matos. I mean, he had a great Winter League. He was the rookie of the year in the Winter League, hit the cover off the ball. If he has a good spring, I say put Matos in there, give him a shot, see what you got with him, and then let Yaz come in as a defensive replacement in the late innings, or if you're, facing a tough right-hander or something like that. But I wouldn't do a straight platoon because I think that nerfs and limits the potential for a young guy like Matos.
I think one thing with Farhan, I agree with what you said, absolutely. I think one thing with Farhan being out now is it always felt like he kind of controlled the lineup a little bit more than he should have, right? Like even when Melvin came in, everyone kind of, okay, like, Kapler was his puppet. He'd do whatever Farhan wanted. And then Bowmill comes in, and everyone's like, okay, we're not going to have that influence as much anymore. But we still kind of did. And I do think a lot of that came from the top down, that we want to play this analytical style. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I think that using analytics to get an advantage is a great tool that successful clubs do. But I do think now with the new regime in charge and maybe Bowmill probably having a little bit more real control over his lineups, I think when we say now a platoon, I don't think it's the Farhan platoon. Like Yaz faces the right-handers and Matos will face the left-handers. I think it's kind of like we want them both to, keep their ability up. We want them both to stay sharp, but we're going to ride the hot hand. If Matos is swinging it well, he's going to be in there every day. If Yaz is swinging it well, he's going to be in there. We have a DH spot. People are going to get hurt. It'll be a lot more kind of mix and match and play the Bochy style, old school, right? By the feel, by the gut, and not so much that this guy needs to be in the lineup today because this X, Y reasons on the computer screen, right? There'll be a lot more real, kind of feel, I think, guiding the games.
Yeah, that always bugs me so much when someone hits 2 home runs the previous day and then, he's on the bench the next day because there's a lefty pitching or whatever. There's a lot of go with the statistics, but then there's also like a very short leash when it comes with the hot hand, who's playing well right now. You have to kind of balance those things.
I do also believe in the hot hand fallacy, but I also baseball is a game of confidence, right? I mean, when guys are confident, locked in, I mean, you just watching the game on TV, you can see it. You can see when someone's seeing it well, when a hitter's hot. There's just that intangible. Statistics don't matter at that point. They're just locked in for a week or two. And with the Farhan regime, it was like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, well, this guy's tearing the cover off the ball right now. Why would you take him out of the lineup? So,
right. Yeah. So then shortstop or Chapman's same. He plays nearly every game, and he will again this year. It'll be tough to get him out of the lineup. Obviously, Adames is a huge upgrade over Nick Ahmed. Fitzgerald had a very good year last year, and Estrada had a very bad year. So it's kind of an upgrade just because Estrada was so bad.
And nothing against Estrada.
Fitzgerald showed a lot of potential. He hit a lot of home runs and limited the number of at-bats. He showed some power. He has the ability to steal bases. And if he can continue without a sophomore slump, then I think that's an upgrade.
So I think I'm going to talk about Fitzgerald a little bit, but in terms of Tyro, I mean, he was probably one of the players left on the team that fans had that fan feeling for. He's been around the organization for a while. We like Tyro. He's been a good player, but it wasn't even just last year. For the last couple years, he's been pretty awful. So I think that is sort of, like you said, addition by subtraction. I wish the guy the best. He was a great Giant, a great player, but played a role that a lot of guys aren't happy accepting, and he embraced it. I'll be your utility guy. I'll come off the bench. I don't care. I'll just come out and play hard. and he did that for several years. Love Tyro. Wish it would have ended better for him. I wish he would have had a couple of good seasons here, but it just like Farhan, right? It didn't work out the last couple of years. We got to make a change. So, but as far as Fitzgerald goes, I go to a lot of River Cats games and had River Cats tickets a couple seasons ago. A couple years in a row, and he was he's a little bit older for a rookie. I think he's 26 this year. I might be wrong about that. I didn't confirm that.
He is older. He might be 27.
So he never had that elite prospect status. He was not that guy. He was 19, knocking on the door. You're the next superstar. But he put in his time. He put in his work in the minors. Every year for the last 3 years on the River Cats, he was their best player. Even when he wasn't like the biggest star on the team or the person rehabbing down in from major leagues. But you go to games and you'd watch. He always was like the leader of the team, hitting in the 3-hole. He playing shortstop, the toughest position, play center field. Dude just always exceeded expectations. Just one of those guys just built into that kind of dude. And I love Tyler Fitzgerald. I'm glad that it worked out for him last year and he kind of made his breakout. And I really hope he can keep that going. And I think he can because of that. He's already hit those bumps in the road. He's not like that. He's a sophomore this year, but he's an older guy. He's been around the minors. He's put in the work. He knows how to do it. I'm very confident. I'm much more confident that Fitzgerald will be good this year more than Ramos. Even though the same is a little bit true for Ramos. I think people kind of forget that Ramos, 2016, 2017, it was a while ago. He was like a top prospect. He was like their big, Ramos is our future star, and he hit that kind of post-hype, late development, and now he's maybe shown it. Hopefully he keeps it up too.
Right.
But
he's
really
been in the system since he was 17 or something. He's played a long time.
So I'm big on Fitzgerald. I think he's a gamer. I think he's gonna be a good player for several years. So.
I'm too. I'm looking forward to watching him this year. Then we get to first base. This was an area that a lot of fans wanted to see if they could improve on. I think there's nothing wrong with Wade and Flores, but they're both very injury prone. And I mean, I guess having two guys at the same position gives you the chance to, hopefully one of them's healthy at any given time. Wade last year had a great start to the season. Like the first couple of months of the season, he was on track to be in the All-Star game.
Mm-hmm.
He was on base nearly half the time. And then he got hurt and was never the same the rest of the year. Flores was hurt most of the year. I barely remember him playing last year.
Yeah.
So by all accounts, both are healthy now, and we'll see. Because 2 years ago, Flores was the best hitter on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And if he can resurrect some of that ability, then could be a good sign for the Giants.
But also 2 years ago, saying that Flores was the best hitter on that team isn't really saying a lot. That team wasn't very good. So that comes with a little bit of a grain of salt. Nothing against Flores. I look at both those guys, and I like Wade, actually. I mean, I don't love Wade, but both those guys, I look at it, I'm like, okay. The good part of that to me is that if we're doing well, if we're competing, it's an easy spot to go make an upgrade, right? Like you're not like if it's a trade deadline and the Giants are in the wild card hunt or even better than that, and you think, wow, we need a little more help in the lineup. It's real easy to go out and look at Vlad Guerrero Jr. It's real easy to go out and look at some of these guys that are going to be available and think we're not moving Wade or Flores aside. No one's going to cry over it, right? So
yeah. So then the one thing that I think the thing that most people are looking forward to in spring training is getting a look at Bryce Eldridge. He, by all accounts, he is the Giants' top prospect without any question, and has torn through the minor leagues. And from what I can tell, I mean, he's 20 years old and his bat is major league ready from what I've heard. And it's just a matter that he isn't much of a first baseman, and he's going to have to learn that position.
And you know my stance on that, from our personal friendship interaction. It doesn't matter. Anyone can play first base. Put him out there. He'll be fine. Catch the ball. So that's not an issue to me. You don't have to learn first base. People who can't the ball, that's all you got to do. So
right. Well, I've been listening to JT Snow interviews and stuff where he's talking about how there's so much what's involved in being a first baseman, and maybe there's a lot involved if you're trying to be like the best first baseman, win
Yeah.
5 Gold Gloves and stuff like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
for the most
JT Snow
part,
was amazing. I loved having JT Snow. Watching him play defense was great. I don't need that, right? Like, I mean, it's great that JT Snow could do that. But if Bryce Eldridge can't, or Vlad Guerrero Jr. comes over and he can't, if he can stand there and catch the balls that are thrown across the diamond and make it out, that's great. That's all I need.
yeah. And then, so I mean, I don't think that there's a chance that Eldridge makes the team out of spring, just because they're not going to want to start his clock this early. Just a money thing, you know. You're going to save having to pay him bigger money for another year. But it's happened before that players play so well in the spring that they have no choice but to put him on the team. And then you have a DH hole, you know, for Wade and Flores. They've already are talking about playing Wade in left field, getting him some time out there so that he's ready to move around if they need him to move around. If that happens, I don't think it's going to happen, but it is a possibility.
I don't think it's a possibility. I agree with what you on that. I think that I think less than you do that it's a possibility, and I don't really think it's even a money thing. I think with the rules they changed a few years ago, that has sort of been mitigated with the fact that you get compensation if you have a young guy come up and do well. You get extra draft picks. You know it kind of incentivizes you to play your guys when they're ready. I just don't think he's quite ready. I don't think there's any reason with the team we have right now. Let him develop. Let him be in the minors. That's fine. Like, let him get comfortable. Let him keep that confidence. I don't like the idea of coming up and making someone struggle to get better. I'd rather come up being confident and feeling capable and ready. So maybe he is there. Maybe he's there and he says, hey, I'm 19, or is he 20, 19, and I'm ready and I want to come up here and crush it. And I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go about it. I mean, it was Luciano right last year. Luciano was like he's the best prospect. He's so great. He's going to come up. He's going to handle shortstop. He's going to crush it. And we saw right away. He had a couple errors, like real early on. His confidence was gone immediately.
Right. Exactly.
And as soon as you lose your confidence, especially at the major level, even in the minor leagues. I mean, I watched him in Sacramento. He was a train wreck down there. His confidence, he had no confidence. And it affected his hitting. It made his fielding even worse than it already was. And
right.
And
that's why they want to get him a full season in AAA. So he comes up and he's not worried about playing for.
I hope Eldridge will be a great player. I feel very hopeful that he will, but I don't see the need to push it right now for any reason other than the fans are excited and want to see him. Right, that would be the only reason I think to do it. It's a long season. If he's ready, if he's showing it in the minor leagues that he's ready, guys are going to be hurt. There's a DH spot. There's going to be plenty of chances to get him up here, get him at bats if he shows he's ready. So there's no need to push it. No need to make him think he has to prove himself in spring training, go extra hard, hurt himself, overswinging, trying too hard, making mistakes. So it's just not necessary.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a question and then see what my daughter wants, and then I'll be right back. But the question is, what do you do with Marco Luciano this season, and where do you see his future with his organization? This is his last season before they have to make a decision on him. He'll be out of options. So what do you think is going to happen with Luciano, and what should they do with Luciano?
It's far too soon to cut him loose. So, I mean, he has an option. He can play in the minors. That's great if that's what he needs to do. I really hope that he will rise to the challenge. I mean, I'm sure that no one is more aware than Marco Luciano how bad last year went for him. The expectations coming into the season, where Giants fans were hopeful how he was going to integrate with the team and be the next star and the young, promising player. And clearly that did not work out at all. So hopefully over the offseason he worked really hard. I mean, what we heard was his bat was like going to be amazing. The sound it made, that's all we ever heard about when he was young. The sound off Luciano's bat, he just hits these monster home runs. So let him come in. He can be a DH. If he can't play a position, I don't care. let him DH. Let him just focus on being that hitter that we heard about that he was going to be. So come in, if the offense isn't doing well, come in and give him a chance. If we're way out of it, come in, let him play. If we're not way out of it and he needs to be a AAA developing, great, let him. But just don't. He doesn't need to have that burden on his shoulders of being the next huge star. Maybe that's what it was last year. Maybe it was the pressure got to him. And I mean, they said that he has good hands, and they said that he's a good defender, and the coaches all talk that up. That always sounds like coach talk to me because I never saw it. I've never seen it. I've ever seen him play in Sacramento or at the major leagues. So I say let the kid hit. Just let him be a hitter. I don't care. Play him at first. Play him in the outfield if you think he can cut it. Be a DH. Doesn't matter to me.
I've heard some people advocating for him playing at first. But obviously they have a first baseman that they're really happy about. So why get him playing there? So I guess it's going to be the outfield, and it's good for someone that's still that young to have a position to play. Making him be a full-time DH at that young of an age is kind of admitting failure. So
I don't see it that way. I get what you're saying. I understand the thought behind that, but I think if you can come up and be one of the best DHs in baseball, that's great. That's only good for the Giants, right? Yaz can play the outfield. I don't need him to be in right field because Yaz is a good outfielder. If Yaz can't hit, that's okay. He can be a good right fielder, and Luciano can be the DH and just hit bombs. That's all I care about. I do agree there. I mean, I understand why you're saying there's excess value in having a position or being able to play a position, but I think it's so slim. If he's going to be a 20% better hitter, not worrying about fielding, just do it. Let him.
Do you think they should have a spot for Herrera and Encarnacion on the team?
Yeah, at the start of the season at least, he should be on the bench and probably in the DH mix. He showed enough potential. I mean, there could be something there. He could be one of those diamond in the rough kind of guys. Farhan, people say what you will about Farhan. He was good finding those kind of players. No one else wanted him. He kind of sees the shine that other teams don't see. He sees the appeal in the numbers and in the stats, and he kind of pulls those little nuggets out. And Art Encarnacion, there's no reason why he couldn't be that guy. So yeah, let him give it a try.
Okay, and then. So we'll come and talk about pitching in a minute, but this came out today or yesterday, and they're going to test the automated ball and strike ABS system during spring training games. Now, the Giants will not have it in Scottsdale, and so there's, I think, 12 games that they will have it in games that they are playing on the road during spring. But each team will start with 2 challenges, and they will only lose their challenge if the umpire's call is confirmed. Only the batter, pitcher, or catcher can challenge a call. The player will tip their cap or helmet to the umpire to signal they want to challenge. They don't get any more in extra innings, and Hawkeye view will be shown during the review. So I guess Hawkeye is kind of where it kind of illustrates where it was in the strike zone, kind of like that box they show on TV.
Do you go to a lot of minor league games, Dale?
No, I don't. I mean, a bit, maybe 1 or 2 a season.
So I don't know if you've seen this used much. They were using it more last year in AAA, but I think in the lower minors last couple of years they've used it, and the last few years they've been using it in AAA. Probably less than half the games. It's not always on. I don't know what their system of rhyme or reason is, but some games they'll use it, some games they won't. I've seen a couple of games where the home plate umpire isn't even making calls. It's fully automated, and they're testing that out. He's just standing back there if there's a play at the plate or whatever, to be the crew chief. But the computer just calls the game. And I honestly, it works very well, better than I thought I would expect it to. So especially the challenge system specifically, it's very seamless. They just give the little signal, and it very quickly, even within seconds, you get the result. It puts it on the scoreboard, and it shows you it's color coded what type of pitch it was. If it was a fastball or breaking ball, and then if it's in the strike zone or out of the strike zone. And it's so easy. It's like out of every major sports replay system that tends to usually be a disaster and controversial, I've never seen, there's no controversy with it. It's just, yep, that one was a strike. I got it wrong, or I got it right, and move on. Change the call and get it right.
I like it too. And I think one, the strike zone has been kind of atrocious the last few years. Now, maybe it always has been, and I have that box on the screen now, and I'm able to see it more. But there's been some pretty bad calls the last few years where the games where there's like multiple flat out misses in situations where it should. So I think it's good to have this. I also think that it makes the umpires want to up their game a little bit, because if you're going to get challenged and you're going to be told, oh yeah, you missed that, right? You were wrong. Then the umpire is going to be like, well, shit, I better step up my game here and make sure that I'm right. Because that umpire is going to have a sense of satisfaction when he calls a strike and the guy's like, that was outside or whatever. And then you're going to challenge it. They challenge it and it comes up, yeah, it was a strike.
I've literally felt that. I've felt that at a minor league game before. Like what you're saying, I've literally felt that before. That like I've seen where the catcher and the pitcher both kept challenging, and every time I went to a game last year where the umpire was right 100% of the time, and you could tell like he kind of walked off the field between innings like a little spring in his step. Like, yep, I crushed that one. Like,
for sure.
Yeah.
And then that'll make the players think twice about challenging, which is fine. But then also, when the umpire is screwing up and making bad calls, it's going to become apparent, and then he'll have to be like, okay, try a little harder or adjust what you think the strike zone is, or whatever it happens to be. Adjustments will be made.
I think we need to be realistic that like there's going to be robo umps, right? Like it's down the road. Hopefully it's not anytime soon. I don't want to see it, but it's going to happen. Like, it's just, that's where baseball is going to head. Like sooner or later, there's going to be robo umps. They're not going to be making the calls and human interactions anymore. And I think that's a huge part of the game. We'll talk about Patrick Bailey probably more, but Patrick Bailey gets huge value out of his pitch framing numbers. Go look at his fan graphs and you can see all his advanced stats and his defensive metrics. And when I say it's not even close, it's not even close how much better Patrick Bailey is. And Buster Posey was the same way. The Giants have had a lot of guys who they kind of like pride themselves on their pitch framing, on their receiving skills, on their ball blocking, and going fully, automatic takes that away, and that stinks when it's such a huge advantage. It is an advantage. I mean, he steals strikes. That's what he does. He steals strikes. He helps his pitchers, and so I'm kind of bummed to see them lose out on some of that. And I hope that it's a long, but the challenge system I think is a net positive. It's better to have important calls right. They're not going to be challenging every pitch. You only get a few challenges. So when it's a big pitch, a big moment, the batter's feeling like he's seeing a pitcher really well, so he doesn't want to strike out on bad call. He can challenge it and stay in, get another pitch to hit. I think it's great. I really think that is a positive.
Yeah, I think it will prevent that one or two, real egregious bad call that happens per game. It doesn't happen much, but if it does, then you can, have your say,
Especially now that Angel Hernandez is retired, so.
Yeah.
Can fix some of that naturally.
Yeah, and then, so I'm all for it. And if the robo ump happens, then, Bailey's WAR drops like 2 points or whatever. Because
maybe more.
He's great at throwing runners out, but he's really, the edge is with the pitch framing and being able to steal strikes, and that really works in his favor. And it did Posey too. Mm-hmm. Posey was great at that, especially with Romo pitching. He would just inch out further and further, outside, and then the ump would just, oh, that's only a little bit more. That's only a little bit more. And then pretty soon you're 6 inches off the zone and he's calling strikes,
And then he'd get up and do that Posey walk before the ump even called him struck out. And then I was like,
well, I guess I struck him out. Yeah. Posey's halfway to the dugout. His pop time to get up just to run to the dugout was pretty fast.
Yep. And it worked. We saw it work all the time.
I know. The umpire's like, oh, I guess that was a strike.
Man, he's so confident. How could it not have been a strike?
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about pitching, huh? Last year, let me pull this up here. Last year, Webb, we have Webb this year. Ray was hurt at the beginning of last year. Now we will have him healthy, hopefully. Last year, Hicks was your number 3 starter. He's still in the rotation there. And I put it in order of righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, which I think is what they're going to do, but who knows. Snell didn't start the season right away. He was hurt a lot the first half and then had a fantastic second half. So he sucked the first half, was great the second half. So he, averages out to be, a pretty good pitcher for last year.
He was okay. He was all right last year. I'll give him that. Yeah.
And then Keaton Winn was the 5th starter last year, which I forgot about. But he was there and pitched. I don't know. He had 8-10 starts to start the season, and then after he got hurt, they had to start mixing and matching and throwing piggyback games and opener games, and Tyler Walker was starting games, which I didn't remember, and Eric Miller was starting games, and then they would bring in a Jelly to come and pitch 3-4 innings after that, or Bivens or whoever. So it was kind of a 5th starter by committee last year. And then last year, Birdsong was in the wings. Ray was coming back. Black pitched some. Roop had some starts. Bivens had some starts. Mm-hmm. This year we've got Webb, Ray, Verlander. 3 aces at one point in their careers. Harrison and Hicks, which means Birdsong is the odd man out right now. They've said that it's an open competition between Harrison and Birdsong for that 5th starter position. And one of them, I would guess, will start in AAA. There's no scenario that all 5 of these guys make it the whole season without getting hurt. So I would believe Birdsong would be the first man up to come in once one of those guys gets hurt. But you have Black, you have Roop, Wynn, Beck, Bivens, and the 3 Carsons that have not pitched in the majors yet. So they have a backlog of starting pitching that potentially could be good, but they're all unknowns. We don't know anything. So what's your assessment of the rotation here?
I want to jump back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show here about missing out on Corbin Burnes, and this is exactly why. I'm not saying you don't need Corbin Burnes. Like, Corbin Burnes is, of course, he's a great pitcher. Like, everyone would be happy to have him, but Arizona gave him 6 years, $210 million. Look at all those names you have over there. I'm not saying that all these guys are going to be stars, but I think you mentioned maybe you already have a Corbin Burnes. Maybe you have someone not quite that good, but these guys all make league minimum. Corbin Burnes is going to make $40 million. He's older. He's going to decline. He has an opt-out. What kind of the ransom that free agents can hold teams to these days in order to, it's like terrorist negotiations almost, I get an opt-out, and if I stink, you're going to pay me all the money, but if I'm great, I'm leaving you to get more money. And for the Diamondbacks, great. I hope he works out for you, kind of, sort of, except for you're in our division, so maybe it's a huge failure and I laugh at you, but I think signing Verlander was absolutely the right move. I mean, hopefully a healthy Ray. Hopefully Verlander can give you 120 innings, mentor a lot of these young guys and show them the right way to go about it. We know Webb's a leader. We know Webb's happy to take guys under his wing and show them. Harrison, he's only going to have so many more chances. He's not the prospect anymore. That's getting close to make it or break it time already. It's hard to believe, but at some point you got to do it. You got to stay healthy. You got to get out there and pitch, and you got to pitch well. And if you don't, Birdsong, Black, Roop, Wynn, Beck, Bivens, Carsons are all behind you, right? So if you can't do it, I mean, they're all replaceable. Everybody's replaceable. And then Hicks, maybe he is a bullpen guy. I think that maybe another year of building up his arm strength. It's the first time we tried him as a starter last year, so maybe it goes better this year. Maybe he has more success. He can go deeper, pitch more innings. That'd be great. But even if he's only given you, if he's that kind of opener guy, which maybe that is their vision of him, I don't know how they really. It was kind of a head scratcher last year for everyone, right? When we signed Hicks to be a starter, and he's never started. Is that a good plan? But maybe you just want 3 or 4 great innings out of him and kind of have that mentality, and then piggyback him with someone that could work. I mean, no one's really seen sustained success with that yet. We've seen openers where they come in, pitch an inning, and then you have your bulk innings guy. But like a true like 4 innings, and then a closer, like that could be the next new thing, the next trend that baseball jumps on. And maybe that's a very successful way to pitch a game and keep your bullpen fresh. So
Right.
it could work. And then having all these young guys behind them, they all have options. I think the name that stands out on that list on both sides to me is someone that doesn't get talked about a lot that I see is Bivens. When I think about last year, like if there was a young guy who had like the most success that I was like most excited to watch pitch, and Bivens, it seemed like he wasn't up for very long. He wasn't on the team for very long, but those games toward the end of the season when he was starting, he was good. So
He was
I'd
good.
like
If
to
you
see
look at his numbers, they were pretty good in last year. People don't realize how well he pitched last
Yeah.
year.
and
I
kind
want
of
to go back to what we said at the beginning was Posey wants to take inventory, see what he has with Matos, with all the young guys that we were jacked around back and forth to the minors last year. We don't know what we have with Luciano or whoever, but if they had signed Corbin Burns, that pushes Harrison out of the rotation, right?
or Hicks, but yeah.
Or Hicks, but
Yeah.
I mean, they seem pretty dead set on giving Hicks at least one more shot. They paid him the big money. They said, we'll give you a shot to be a starter, and they're going to give him that shot. And it sounds to me that he put in the work in the offseason. He put on a lot of muscle and worked his ass off the whole offseason to give it a good go, and they're going to give him that shot. So, if Birdsong and Harrison were starting in Sacramento, I think that would be not what the Giants are. Their objective of seeing what the young guys have, that would not accomplish that.
Yep.
So I like that at least Harrison's in there. I would like to see Birdsong at the major league level also. So
Yeah, I mean,
whether that be piggybacking, like you said, and trying something like that, or my idea, it's not my idea, but an idea that I kind of like is going with the 6-man rotation and having them all up there, knowing that somebody's going to get hurt, and then you're going to be down to a 5-man rotation. And then also Harrison, Hicks, Birdsong, they're not going to pitch 200 innings.
Verlander,
They're not going to
Ray,
pitch 160
probably
innings,
Yeah,
right? Verlander's not going to pitch 170 innings.
right. Ray's
So
probably
all
not
those
either.
guys,
Everyone
Ray
never
probably is not going to pitch 150 innings.
Mhm.
They're all, other than Webb, no one's giving you 150 innings in that thing. So why not extend it out an extra day, fit someone else in there, and you knowing you're not going to get the full season out of all these guys anyway.
Yeah,
So-
I can see that. I can definitely see that. I can jump over that. But I also do think, though, that the fact that these young guys have options left and they can pitch in the minors, I mean, I think either way is good with me, right? I think a lot of teams are a little too quick to jump to the 6-man rotation, especially when you still have, for guys like Harrison, for these young guys in AAA, they've come up in the minors, the kind of new style of baseball. They're used to those shorter outings and pitching less often, so maybe they're more comfortable with it. But I bet Webb, Ray, Verlander, they're probably wouldn't be super excited about having an extra day off, and kind of throws off their routine and preparation. So I think you have to factor some of that human element into it. It's not a video game, right? There's like people who this is their career, they're professionals, and this is what they're comfortable with. And getting people out of their comfort zone isn't always the best thing to do. So,
True.
yeah, I mean, I do think it wouldn't be bad on the arms, but
Yeah, and I do think that, I know Posey has said, or somebody said, that they do plan on extending out the minor league pitchers a little bit longer,
Yeah,
getting
I like
them to
that.
pitch farther into games, because when they come up, they're not ready to go the distance or to go long into games. So they come in and pitch 5, and then having to pitch 4 innings, or pitch 4, having to pitch 5 innings taxes the bullpen.
Yep.
And
the pressure they feel, right? They're at 80 pitches at 3 innings, and they try to get too careful, too fine, because they want to go deeper. That's how they make their money, right? That's their future. You're not going to make it as a starting pitcher in this league. You only go 3 innings. That's still that mentality when it comes to negotiations and getting paid. It's not, the arbitration system doesn't look at your ERA and your Ks per 9. It looks at how many innings did you pitch, How many wins do you have? Like old school numbers. That's what's going to get them their arbitration salaries and make money being a professional baseball player. So I think that was really tough on the young guys, kind of changing this. We're in this like transition period right now of like old school versus new school, and it's like with the Farhan style, analytical front office people. They want the great numbers, but there's more to it to that than just thinking about, oh, just go out there and pitch 3 great innings for us. That's great. And a guy like Harrison's probably going, I'm gonna be considered a relief pitcher. I'm never gonna make any money doing this. I'm not gonna be considered like a Hall of Fame starting pitcher like Justin Verlander would be. So I think that is in play. Maybe I over exaggerated, but I think there's some of that.
Yeah. Oh, I messed up. Okay. So, and then now let's real quick look at the bullpen.
I do want to say one more thing. Actually, I'll save that for later. So yeah, bullpen.
Okay, bullpen. Walker is going to be your closer. You've got Duvall. Hopefully he can have a bounce back year. You've got right-hander Tyler Rogers. Now you've got Eric Miller taking the spot of Taylor Rogers, and then Randy Rodriguez. There's a lot of other options for the bullpen.
A lot of names up there. A lot of them are, Jelly. We got to see a lot of last year. Bivens quite a bit last year for like long men. But I think that'll be, the big 5 in the bullpen from what I can see. Now there is a lot of, invitees. There's 8 left-handed pitchers that they have pitching in spring. One of them will probably make the team. But I don't know. I kind of feel pretty good about the bullpen. I do too. Yeah. I like you said, unless all 8 of those guys are just disasters in spring training, I would expect at least 1, if not 2 of them to come up and be added in here. And I imagine on your left side there, that probably, it might be, but maybe not even a full accounting. Is that everyone who pitched an inning in 2024? Or is there other guys maybe not included? Either way, look at the list of names, over the course of a season, this isn't going to be it, right? There's going to, even in the starting rotation, there's going to be injuries. It's a pitching staff, With the lineup, you can kind of sit there and say, well, this is kind of how we think it's going to go this year. This is what we hope, but this is where we plan it to be. With a pitching staff and a bullpen, it's just more. We hope it kind of resembles this by the end of the year, and it probably won't. Almost never does that end up happening.
Right.
So, there will be guys who we haven't heard about. What's the Braxton Roxby? Right? That's the guy they got for Rogers in that trade with Cincinnati. You don't trade for a guy just to do nothing. So hopefully they see something in him. He might be in the conversation. There's going to be other guys coming up, young guys coming up. So, but the 5 main guys you got on your list, I love it. I think that's a great start. I don't see any reason why Duvall wouldn't bounce back. He's been such a great reliever before. So I think Eric Miller is fantastic.
Yeah. And I saw they had Yusmeiro Petit talking to him, give him some advice. I pitched 92 and I was fine. You can throw 103 and, you should be pretty easy for you.
He'll be fine. He got in his head a little bit last year. He kind of things a little sideways, but there's no reason why he can't be elite. Mechanically, his ability is all there. So.
Yeah. Now, if Jordan Hicks was also in that bullpen, that would be pretty lights out. But they want to give him a shot at starting, so be it. All right. Yeah. So, you have any other topics you want to bring up?
No.
Okay. So I got a few more. Melvin recently was talking to reporters, and he floated the idea of hitting Jung-Hoo Lee in the 3-hole and leading off with Wade. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. So he was saying, if he was to pick a lineup right now, it would be Wade, Adames, Lee, Chapman, and then Ramos or whoever. And I wanted to see
probably keeping it right, left, or left, right, left, right.
Left, right
Yeah.
is what he's thinking. Yeah.
I think that's overrated to me, and I'm not a professional manager, so I'm sure I'm wrong, but I don't get married to that. But outside of that, I do think I guess my thought on that is I don't necessarily see Lee as a number 3 hitter, but I definitely do see Wade as a leadoff hitter, 100%. I have no problem with Wade being a leadoff. Absolutely, yeah. So
the only other option I saw, I mean, Lee was fine at leadoff last year. I think he's pretty good in that position. But Fitzgerald, I think, could be a good leadoff hitter because he's fast. You know, you get him on base. Now, he did strike out a little more than you'd like for a leadoff hitter. But if you had Lee hitting second behind Fitzgerald gets on base, then you have Lee at the plate, who's a high contact hitter. He's a left-hander. So when the first baseman is holding on Fitzgerald, then that opens up that hole in the right side of the infield, which is good for Lee. And then he's going to put the ball in play a lot and hitting runs, stealing bags, whatever. I think that could get things jump started pretty well.
Yeah.
And then, you know, have Adames come in or Ramos or Chapman.
In my mind, the number 3 hitter is a lot more of those 3 guys you just mentioned. Like who hits third, fourth is Adames, Chapman, Ramos, right? It's like those guys.
Right.
I don't see Lee. I see Lee being number 2. Even same thing as you're saying for Fitzgerald. I know that Wade's not as much of a threat to steal a base, not nearly as much as Fitzgerald would be, but same principles apply. Like if Wade gets on base 45% of the time, you know, his OPS has been huge at times in his career. If he's in one of those, you know, he's locked in, he's hot, he's getting on base all the time. Let him hit at the top and let Lee hit number 2 behind him. I don't care if they're both left-handed. Lee can get those ground ball infield hits. He has the speed, so anything that the defense is having to play out of their normal depth, normal positioning because someone's on base, it's only good. It's only hopeful. So.
Yeah. So I don't know. It seemed like to me maybe he was saying Lee third. I don't know if we will actually see that happening, but the Korean press really thought that was good, and like, you know.
I mean, I think there was times in Ichiro's career where he batted third for a while. I mean, I wouldn't swear to that, but you know, we talk about how much Lee Jung-hoo looks just like Ichiro up there. So
yeah.
Hey, if Ichiro could do it, then Lee could do it. Hopefully.
If you were to add one more piece to this team, either by free agency or trade, you know, before the start of the season, what would you add?
The easy answer for me is just a hitter, just a good hitter. Like I don't care where, if he has to play left, if he has to play right, if he has to play first, if he has to play second. Fitzgerald can move around. So if you could just find a good stick that's like an everyday, like a middle of your order kind of guy. I know there's not any sitting in free agency right now, so that's not realistic. And they're probably not making any trades right now at this point of the you know, getting ready to start spring training or spring training underway. So to me, it's more, I'm going to look forward if we're doing well in the season and we're getting close to the trade deadline. I want to go get Vlad Jr. If I get to pick one guy, my dream guy that I get to trade for, I want to trade for Vlad Jr. and sign him to an extension, and I'm happy. Or maybe that's Pete Alonso, someone in that mold, right? A big first baseman, someone with some real legitimate power threat. And then, you know, Eldridge gets here. If he's developing and he's ready, that's fine. We got a DH spot, so they can both play together. It's not a big deal. They'll make it work.
Who is the backup catcher opening day this year?
It sounds like it's not going to be Tom Murphy, right? So it sounds like he's already dealing with some pretty bad back problems. It's not sounding great, what I'm hearing.
Right. And, I mean, I like his bat, but he didn't really do much last year.
He was hurt last year,
he was a liability behind the plate. Like, people were stealing on him like it was going out of style, you know? Like, I wasn't very confident in his arm behind the plate. And so they have some other players in spring.
I think Sam Huff is like the kind of plug and play replacement, I think, for Murphy. Like he has a good bat. He's like a threat to pinch hit, come off the bench. If Bailey's out there most games and he's still a young guy and he can go 70% of games, maybe that's a little bit too high for a catcher. They don't really let him do that anymore, but I'd like to see him if he can. I'd like to see him out there as much as he can possibly be out there. He's that valuable defensively. But then
he has slowed down at the end of years. The last 2 years, he's run out of gas.
Yeah,
and
he's also a small dude, so he's hopefully bulking up and can have a little more stamina, hopefully. So.
Yeah, so he's made some changes in his off-season routine to hopefully combat that. But I worry that the Giants need a solid backup catcher who's going to play, 2 out of 6 games or whatever. Not 2 out of 5, but not one. But Bailey's not going to be taking only 1 game out of 5 off. It's going to be 1.5 games.
And I don't think they really have another prospect right now. I'm just trying to. I haven't checked their prospect rankings in a while. I don't think there's anyone really behind him right now that is knocking down the door.
I mean, last year they got into trouble with that. They had the AAA catcher up there caught a few games. Can't remember his name now. But not good. And then they had to sign Kurt Casale, who could just hold it down defensively, but just didn't do much with the bat. So they might be in that same position this year where they have to bring somebody in that's a veteran that can just hold down the fort if nobody else can step up. That's a big question for me.
One guy that comes to mind in that prospect mold is Auerbach, Brett Auerbach, and he kind of is he's not really a catcher like by trade, but I think he's learned catcher. But he's one of those real promising multi-position utility kind of guys that are I think he could pretty much play anywhere. He could probably pitch. That guy kind of just do whatever, and I think he's a good player. And so maybe he shows he's ready to make the roster at some point, and he could be that backup catcher as long as they don't if Bailey goes down. If you need a real catcher, he's not kind of your solution. But hopefully that's not a problem. I think that Bailey is probably the most important guy. Maybe Chapman's in the conversation, but Bailey and Chapman, I think, for this to be a successful season and be in the playoff hunt, to me, those are the two most key guys. Them and Webb, and then just the bullpen being a good functioning unit, a strong bullpen. But I think if Bailey got hurt for a significant amount of time, I think they're in pretty big trouble.
That was a big problem for the Giants last year, is that Bailey did miss time. He had a concussion. He had a couple of concussion issues, I think, where he came back for a game and then was out for another DL season or stretch. And as I
he's a catcher, right? Catchers get beat up. It's going to happen.
They did not fare well when he was not in there.
Yep.
Okay, well, last question for you, and we'll wrap it up here. First spring training game is Saturday. Who are you looking most forward to in that game? So who's coming up to the plate and you're moving towards the edge of your seat and kind of leaning in a little bit?
It's probably at this point, it's probably Lee. We didn't get to see a lot from him last year. It was exciting at the beginning of the year. We didn't get to see a whole lot. So I'd like to see him, in year 2/year 1.5, get it going. But it's also in that conversation is both. It's about 50-50 for me, Ramos and Fitzgerald. I want to see their development keeping on that positive ascension, and they just keep getting better, and that would be the best thing that can happen to the Giants right now. If Ramos and Fitzgerald can duplicate last year's success, and then if they can improve, that the Giants will be in such a good spot if those two guys are the real deal. And they're both question marks. Ian Lee's a question mark. Maybe none of them are that guy. Hopefully, if the Giants are going to be competing in their division, those are the guys that really need to do it.
All right. Well, I have a few, but I'm going to say I want to see Eldridge. I have not seen him in person yet. I just saw some clips online, but I'd like to see what he's got and, how close he is. Even in playing first base, if he looks kind of solid out there. The routine stuff he's going to make. It's just the ones where you have to dive for something, or he's 6'7" or something, he can definitely get the ones up in the air.
Yeah.
But he was talking today about when do I abandon first base to go get the ball or whatever, and he was talking to Will Clark, or not Will Clark. I can't remember who he was talking to, but they're like, it was Sean Jelly.
Mm-hmm.
Jelly says, well, just go if you can get the ball, get the ball. It's our job to cover first base. That's true. But if he's having to tell him that right now, then
doesn't sound great.
Maybe he's a little bit farther away from being ready than we'd like. So
I think it's probably some of it is in my head. It's just that the pressure, right? Like he has to be feeling that I'm the hope of the Giants, right? I'm anointed the next great thing, just like Luciano was last year. Like, I want to make every play. I want to be perfect. I want to show like that I'm ready to be there. And that's why I say that I don't think they should really get his hopes up too high on making the team out of spring training. Like, just make the routine plays, learn the position, like don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. Be a first baseman. You don't be the best first baseman in the world. Like, I don't want you to be the best first baseman in the world. If you end up getting there, okay, that's awesome. Congratulations. Maybe JT Snow mentors you and you become just like an exceptional first baseman. I want you to hit 40 home runs. I want you to have 110 RBIs. Like, I want you to be on base. I want you to get the other guys on base in. If you let one get between your legs, or you don't get to a diving ball, or you don't cover the bag, and okay, it's a learning process. That's fine. But I want you to hit and not feel the pressure, like Luciano clearly felt last year and just crumbled. So.
Yeah, and then I want to see Ramos take the next step this year.
Yeah.
He was the first hitter to hit one, right-handed hitter to hit one in the Bay. He's got power. I think he's going to hit 30 home runs this year, and I wanted to see him get off to a hot start. So,
my big question mark with Ramos is I've seen him in the minor leagues a lot because he's been there for a long time. It took him a long time to develop, and there's been some times where he's just seemed dejected or lazy. I don't know if necessarily the right word to use, but there's just times where he just seems like he's not that into it. So hopefully his success last year, that's what I want to see. Like, I want him to kind of catch that fire. Like, he hasn't seemed like the most competitive guy to me at times, just watching his body language. And I think those are the kind of guys you need. And that's like what I was saying earlier about I'm not worried about Fitzgerald's development, because I think he has that. Like, he wants to be a good player. And I feel like there's times where I've seen Ramos, like, he doesn't really care about being a good player. Like, he gets in a slump and you see the shoulders sagging and you kind of see it on the face. And those are the guys I worry about. That baseball's hard. It's a long season. There's ups and downs. You're going to struggle. There's going to be slumps. So being able to, get out of those slumps quickly and recover from them and not let it be the end of the world and ruin your whole season, it's huge for me. So.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let me play this for you so you know you can get a hold of us.
Care to comment? Call or text us at 415-855-2455. That's area code 415. Hunter Pence, Timmy, Willie, Timmy. Or email feedback at talkinggiants.com.
So there you go. You can call or text that number, 415-855-2455. If you text it, it goes right to my phone, and then I'll have the list of your guys' comments to read on the next show, or you email us feedback at talkinggiants.com. You can also go to talkinggiants.com, and all the shows will be up there. The YouTube feed will feed right in there. And then you can also check us out. We're on Twitter, Instagram, every which way, Facebook, any place you can see a stream, we'll be streaming on, and you can follow us on those places. So let's do this. All right, well, thanks for tuning in, Steve. I'm looking forward to this season, and let's hope they can get off to a good start this year.
Thanks, I was excited. Thank you for the nice conversation. It was great.
All right, we'll see you guys later.
We have been talking Giants baseball. Go Giants!